welcome back to The Real AI by ActNow 360, the show where we sit down with founders and operators who are actually building things and not just talking about them. Not the hype, not the headlines, the real stuff. The stories that usually do not make it onto a stage. Now, I'm Sutopa Dwivedi. I'm the founder of ActNow 360. We help founders and operators use AI and automation to run leaner, move faster, and stop doing work that a machine should be doing. Now, I started this podcast because I kept meeting people who were actually doing what everyone else is just talking about. And my guest today is one of those people I'm very excited to have in my show. Matt Hall started a web design agency in 2009 from his apartment, serving local businesses, no funding, no team, just a laptop, and a willingness to figure things out. Now, most people in that position stay there. Matt didn't. Today, he runs 3 things simultaneously. Scepter Marketing, a digital agency that now positions itself as an AI-powered growth partner. Ecom Circles, an all-in-one Amazon and Walmart selling platform with, I think, over 3,000 users and more than $100 million in community revenue. And Alfred, a Google business profile optimization tool that he built from idea to working MVP in 10 days using AI and no developers. Now, it's the last detail is the one that got my attention, because building a SaaS product in 10 days, it's not a productivity hack. It's a statement about what changes when someone who really understands systems gets hold of AI tools. And Matt didn't use AI to go a little faster. He rewrote his relationship with building entirely. Matt Hall, welcome to The Real AI.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
The pleasure is all ours. Now let's start at the beginning. 2009 apartment. Now you are building websites for local businesses. Walk me back to that version of Matt Hall. What was the actual situation and what were you thinking that you were building?
Yeah, that was quite a while ago. I kind of stumbled into building websites. I took a course online to learn. I was in college at the time trying to learn development, and once I got this course, I was able to build WordPress websites pretty easily just following the course. And so I dropped out of college and said, I can just do this. I can just do this myself. I don't need to take this course from this professor who's behind where I'm already at. Being able to use WordPress to put together entire websites pretty quickly. So that's kind of where I started. My first projects were not glamorous. One of my first projects was, I think, $200 I charged the small business, and it took 6 months to get done because they wanted 1,000 changes, right? Every month it was more stuff before they'd pay me. And so it was a little rough getting started, but it was fun because I always like to empower myself, right? And I love to go fast. I love speed. And so that's always been something that's kind of native to me. And so that was one thing. Once I got my hands on that course and I was able to build sites myself, I said, let's just go ahead and do it this way.
Awesome. Now, most people will typically start there and stay there because, you found a way out of the project to project trap. What changed? Now, when did Scepter go from a freelance operation to something with real infrastructure?
Probably really when I hired the right people. Every time I hire a better person, it was a massive step in my business. But not everybody that I hired was the right person, right? So it took me quite some time to hire. I was probably, 1 for 15, 1 for 20 as far as a good person, right? That really made a massive difference. So I started by going to Upwork and just hiring freelancers. And the first freelancer that I got, who's actually still with me, 20 years, almost 15 years later, he would set up the WordPress websites for me for, I think it was like $5 a site or $10 a site or something. So it was, saved me an hour or two of stuff that I had to do back then because it was a lot more manual than it is with the one-click stuff that they have today. And so, but that freed me up to do, so now I could have him set up all the sites and I could go do something else. And then eventually, got a project manager type person, got somebody that did blog writing. And so every time I got one of these people that had really good skills, it really helped the business move forward. And that's actually what's kind of allowed us to continue to grow.
That's great. I mean, that pretty much brought in the compounding effect, right? Because you were trying to scale the business and now you have more time, so you can go faster. That's a systems thinker's answer, honestly. Now, most founders think I need help. You were thinking I need leverage. Now, was that conscious or did you figure that out by accident?
I think it's because I like to go fast. So I said, well, how do I go faster? And I can't do everything myself. So I need somebody to do something. And if I had somebody else to do something, then I could go faster and I could do the things that I'm better at, and somebody else could do something that I don't like as much. And I got a little taste of that with that first freelancer, right, where he was doing stuff that I was tedious. But then as he started to take tasks off my plate, I could do more higher level stuff and kind of move in that direction. So I don't know how much of it was like a conscious decision that I'm going to build systems, I'm going to do it this way, I'm going to hire people. It was really more probably honestly just fumbling through it and trying to figure it out.
Okay. Because I saw that on your website. You mentioned systems over hustle. Now, what does that actually mean in your practice? I hear that framing a lot, but I want to see if it means something specific for you.
Sure. So I'll start with a quick little story of even just the last 2 weeks where I violated my own principle and then came back around to it, right? So with AI, right, everything goes really, really fast. And so I kind of fell back into hustle mode. I was just building stuff, building stuff, building stuff, building stuff. And next thing you know, I have, I don't know, 70 something skills that are somewhere, throughout my Claude instance. We have all these different projects. But it was a disaster, right? There were multiple instances of projects that were saved. Some data was saved in a database, some was in MD files, some was in our project management software. So it just got to be a huge mess. I said, wait, let's go back and let's go back to the systems. And I basically spent the last week retooling everything and putting the system back in place so that I can move faster, right? Because the system is the structure that makes it so I don't have to keep everything in my head. Having the system allows me to be able to plug in other people, plug in other systems, other tools, and to be able to follow a standardized process so that we actually get to the result without the hustle, without having to burn out, without having to do all of the stuff and manage all the stuff myself, right? The system itself becomes the growth engine.
Okay, that sounds great. Now, I know you have had like a couple of different identities in your career. Like you have been a web designer, an agency founder, an Amazon seller, a SaaS builder. Now, which one stuck the most? And when someone asks what you do, what do you actually say?
So I typically kind of tongue in cheek say that I either am trying to turn my computer into an ATM, or I just say I do stuff on the internet, and then I let them ask questions if they're actually interested, right? And we can kind of talk about whatever. Because when you're as far into AI and stuff, like it's just sometimes it's not really relatable. It's like I talk to robots all day. I tell people that actually quite frequently as well. I just say I talk to robots all day. That's all I do these days is just talk to my AI terminal and try to do everything. Everything's plugged in, right? So that's kind of my answer.
And what's usually the reaction from people? Like, now I know with the AI hype, it's like, oh wow, you are an AI person, but what would you say otherwise, like when it wasn't that much into the hype?
Yeah, before the AI stuff, I would just say that I sell stuff online was usually it. That was something that people could wrap their heads around. If I told them that I built software that connected to 7 different other systems through APIs
Yeah.
that had all these users and all this stuff, like their eyes just glazed over. I tried it a couple times, right, explaining that we used our robots to process something like 500,000 orders on Amazon automatically, right, and people just like they don't really quite wrap their heads around like why would you do that or what, like
Yeah.
it's too far outside of their purview. So I just got and the answers amuse myself. That's really why I say them, right? Like I talk to robots all day. I find it funny, so I laugh at myself when I tell people.
That's great to know. Okay. Now I'll start with Ecom Circles here. You mentioned in the pre-podcast chatting as well, it's, the dirty data problem that made you to build a platform. So Ecom Circles came out of you actually selling on Amazon yourself. You started in 2014, right?
Hmm.
So
Yep.
what did selling on Amazon actually look like for you at the beginning, and what broke?
Yeah. So great question. So I just jumped in. I had a friend that was selling on Amazon and selling on eBay, and said, "Hey, you should try this. You should try this." And he just kept bugging me about it. And I was trying to run my agency, and so I didn't really want anything to do with it. He bugged me so much that I was like, "Fine, man, I'll just try it." And so my first weekend, I listed some stuff on Amazon. I got 3 sales. I lost money on all 3 of them because I didn't do it right. I didn't price them right, so I actually ended up losing money. But I'm like, oh, this actually works, and it was way easier than eBay. And so I started finding items, and I used that. I worked with that same virtual assistant that I mentioned before. He kind of migrated over into the e-commerce business and was helping us do product sourcing. So we started to sell, and it was great. But back then, Amazon's Seller Central portal was not what it is today, and there were a couple of just oddities, right? So we'd get orders, and they would come in chronological order. But if one of them was pending, meaning that the customer's payment hadn't gone through yet, it would once that payment went through, it would still be in the chronological order of when it came in, not when it actually came all the way through. And so we started missing some orders because after hundreds of orders, all of a sudden an order would show up back on like 5 pages ago. in their system. So it was just not a good way for us to really keep track of stuff. And I said, hey, you know what? I need software. We already have this digital marketing agency. Let me just pull some of my developers and we'll start building something. And so that's kind of what it looked like when I first got started. It was just me trying to solve my own problems. And again, how do I do this faster, right? How do I build more automation? What if we could just take all of this website and compare it to this other website and spit out a whole bunch of leads? That would make my life a lot easier. We'd be able to go faster. We'd be able to grow. And so it's just always that hunger of like, how can I do this better? How can I do this faster?
So you were already, but checking already the existing tools first, right? I'm curious to know, how did you get from I missed some orders to I'm going to build software for this?
Sure. The impetus was there was a lot of orders. We had hundreds of orders, and we were using Amazon's own system, which was okay, but it didn't have. We had to use a bunch of spreadsheets as well, right, to keep track of everything that we were doing outside of Amazon, and then that got kind of hairy. So we said, why don't we just try building software for this? There were some tools that we used, and this is actually one of the things that we're trying to solve with Ecom Circles now, is that for Amazon sellers in particular, usually, I'd say on average, they probably string together somewhere between 6 and 15 different tools that they use end to end for their Amazon business. They have tools for doing product research. They have tools for keeping track of their orders, for keeping track of their inventory, for keeping track of when Amazon loses your inventory, for keeping track of your prices on Amazon and comparing or changing your price against your competitors. There's all these different tools, and sometimes there's multiple tools for each one of those things. And so with Ecom Circles, we're trying to bring all of that under one roof for Amazon and for Walmart sellers and beyond, so that they just need to have one tool where they can just sign up for one subscription. They have one suite. The whole thing is cohesive. And again, that was just a problem that I was trying to solve for myself, because even from back then, and not much has changed in some regards now, there's still so many tools. So when I started, I used some of the existing tools, and they were okay. And some of them we used for quite some time, but they weren't comprehensive. And I like comprehensive because I need comprehensive to be able to automate the whole thing. And that was always my goal. Like, let's just automate as much as we can end to end. Even back, 15 years ago, let's automate as much as we can, because if it's automated, then we can scale it.
Okay, that's great to know. I know Amazon constantly changes their policies. I think last year they came up with a different kind of an AI policy, but that becomes an issue for the sellers, right? I mean, because they have to constantly adhere to the policy changes, and if they get red flagged, basically, that's like a rug being shifted from under their foot. Like, they can lose their business all of a sudden. So is your platform also looking into those kind of issues as well for them?
So we try to, we don't look into those. We look into some of the issues. What we ended up doing was kind of shifting our software's model to cater towards different models, because when we first started, we were just a dropshipping platform, because that's what I was doing, and that was one of the areas that got heavily regulated by Amazon. And so we ended up in that situation where a lot of our sellers got flagged and they had issues, and we ended up losing some users over that. And so now we've kind of gone more broad, and so some of that we do have some built-in tools to help with some of that, or we've have over the last few years. We've built in some of those kinds of tools. We have other ones that are planned to do that, because that's part of the cohesive all-in-one system, is to try to ask and answer the question, how can we help protect sellers from those kinds of policies?
Right. Because now I think your platform already has more than 3,000 users, right? So when you look at that number now, what does it tell you about the size of the problem you were solving?
That is still pretty massive. I mean, there are still millions of Amazon sellers. Walmart's trying to catch up, but they've still got a long ways to go. Unfortunately, for Walmart, it seems like their infrastructure is ancient, and so they have like this kind of weird thing where some of their stuff is like cutting edge that they're doing, and then other stuff is so legacy from them being around for so long, where Amazon kind of like started in the middle and has only moved this way. Walmart still has to bring a lot of their legacy stuff, it seems like, back into the future. So they're trying to catch up. But that said, e-commerce isn't going anywhere. I think it's still growing year over year, and there are interesting new players in the game like Temu. So we're building an integration with them. TikTok shops as well. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Mirakl network, but it's kind of a plug-and-play software as a service for retailers that want to allow third parties to sell on their platform. So they integrate with some 450 different merchants. I think like Best Buy, I think, is one of their tools. I want to even say Macy's. A couple of other large retailers use them as their third-party provider software, as opposed to building their own in-house. And so we integrate with that as well. And so there are all kinds of new platforms and opportunities, is what I'm trying to basically get at. And so we're trying to just capture as much as we can and help sellers in the best way that we can, building automated solutions that really do help them reduce the amount of time that they have to put in on a day-to-day basis, so that you can have a one-person store, grow to hundreds of thousands of dollars a month in revenue.
That's amazing. So you're actually building a platform which is constantly evolving, and this was started because again, the existing solutions were bad, and now the market is already validating that what you're working on is actually extremely beneficial. That's amazing. Now you started automating before AI existed as a mainstream concept. Where you had robots placing orders for drop shipping when everyone else was doing it manually. Where did that instinct come from, to reach for automation before it was the obvious answer?
That's a good question. I think actually one of the tools that already existed had it, and it just didn't work very well. And so you could log in, you could place some orders, but it would place them one at a time, and it was pretty slow, and it wasn't built for scale, and that doesn't work for me. So you could place maybe 20, 30, 40 orders a day or something. And so we set out to build a system that could process 1,000 orders simultaneously. And so I don't know if we ever actually processed 1,000 at the same time, but we were processing over 1,000 orders a day, in our peak.
Wow, that's great. Now I'm going to come to the centerpiece of the episode, which is Alfred in 10 days. Now, Alfred, the GBP optimization tool for local businesses, you built this in 10 days. Now, I want to go inside those 10 days specifically because I used AI to build a product fast. Take me into the actual process. What did day one look like for you?
Sure. So this was kind of my intro project to AI. I'd heard about AI. I'd obviously used ChatGPT and Claude and whatever. I came across a tool that allowed me to kind of just prompt and build websites or start building software. And so I started using it, and at the same time I was frustrated. I had a project that had been sitting on the back burner for about a year and a half. I had hired a new development team to come in and fix the previous development team's work, and their first iteration was so just not what I was hoping for. It was so off the mark that I just didn't even, I said, we're just don't even bother. I don't have time to explain everything that needs to be done. So I said, this would be a really interesting case study to use these AI tools that exist now, and let's just see what I can do. Let me just see, can I do that? I didn't even know if I could, right? I didn't know how good the tools were. I had used some of a different development tool, I don't know, maybe 6 months prior, and it was terrible, right? I spent all of my tokens trying to just get it to build a spreadsheet uploader, right? And it was miserable, and it didn't work. And so that was kind of where my head was at. And so it was more of a question for me, is this even possible? So as I started working through it, it seemed like it was possible, and I was able to get further in a couple of hours than it felt like my development team had been able to do, either of the development teams had been able to do, right? And the first one was before AI, but still. And so one thing led to another. My poor wife, I have my laptop open at the dinner table, right, while I'm trying to code and send some prompts and then eat some food and have a conversation and then go back to send another prompt and wait for it to do its thing and so on. So those 10 days were pretty intense. I spent a lot of time just trying to, because I was learning how to do it as well as actually doing it, right? Nobody taught me how to build sites with AI or whatever. I knew what I wanted. We had tried to build it twice, and so I had the concepts. I had even some of the scope documents that the teams had put together. I even had some frameworks, right? Some of the code that was there from 2 years ago or whatever when the first team built it. And so let's just try to pull this. Can we pull it? Yeah, we can pull this. Yeah, can we do this? Yeah, we can do that. And then, well, could we do this too? Could we connect it to here? And could we connect it to this? And what if we just rearranged it? And then the nice thing is that you start to learn how it works, and you can. What I found is that I can iterate in real time, right? No having to talk to a BA that then has to write it up, who then has to get to the developers to see if it's possible, and then get it back to the BA, and then get it back to me to say, is this what you wanted? And then I say yes, and then they implement it, and we go through the same cycle back and forth. And so, 3 weeks later, you finally have your first thing to look at. This was all instant. I could just say, this is what I like. It would make something. I said, I don't like this part. I don't like this part. Let's change it around. And it would just do it. This is fantastic and phenomenal. I wonder if I can get it to do this. It's yeah, we can do that. Let me just go grab the API documents and connect this and whatever. That's amazing. That would have taken weeks. And here we just did it in days. So I just took it over those 10 days, pushed it to see if I could not just build what I had told the developers to build, but if I could build the ideal concept. Because there were no limits all of a sudden, right? It's just how fast can I type in prompts? And so that was it. In about 10 days, I had it done. And it was probably 3 times the scope of what I had set out to do in the first place, because I was just testing and I was just going at it to see what was even possible, and it was awesome.
Wow. And the focus here was mainly that you wanted to reduce the onboarding friction as much as possible, right? The goal was when someone lands on the tool, gets results quickly, understand what it does, and then decides whether to buy or not, right? That was the main goal behind this behind Alfred here?
Yeah, a combination of 2 things really. One, we wanted an onboarding portal for our agency, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that users could kind of onboard themselves.
Yeah.
And in our agency, we work with other agencies that white label our services. So they then have their own clients. And so we wanted a nicer way for them to be able to onboard their own clients. And then because a lot of what we do is SEO,
Mm-hmm.
we wanted to be able to offer a Google Business Profile audit and be able to offer that to them so that they could run those for their clients. It would give them something of a lead magnet, as well as being able to see that the process, or be able to actually see the process and the work that we do. We wanted to be able to demonstrate that to them. And to your point, exactly, we wanted it to all be as frictionless as it possibly could be, because with software, especially with software that can be built by AI, your software could be great, but if it's difficult to use, the user doesn't care. They just want it to be, I want to push a button and I want money to rain from the sky, right? So that's what we try to build, is just how can we constantly just reduce the friction. So that was part of what I did as I was going through the process.
Your ability to, go from idea to implementation in hours, like and instead of weeks, I think that's magnificent here. Now, if I ask you, like, what do you think it would have taken you? The same build would have costed you through a traditional developer workflow? Do you have you ever thought about that?
It would have been painful. It would have for sure been painful. Time wise, it would have been. I mean, we didn't. I think they were working on it for 2 or 3 months to get to where I didn't like it, right? And that was the second time around, right after the first team kind of that I was working with. I hired a team at that point, and they kind of botched it. And so and then being that I did 3 times the scope, right? It would have taken probably, I don't know, 6 months, maybe 9 months, especially with all the back and forth, right? So it's that fast, which is just, it's mind blowing how fast it is. Like, it's actually difficult for me to wrap my head around how fast these things can go until you see it and you do it. And even then, sometimes you're doing it, like once you get done, you're like, this is, how did it really only took me, like that's and then it kind of scares you because you're like, oh my goodness, like the power of this thing is so vast. What else could we do?
I mean, that's the power of AI, right? You saved months of calendar time and a meaningful amount of money. These are just real numbers, so you're showing the power of AI here. Now,
Yeah.
and you lived up to your motto, which is speed, right? I mean, you want to do things faster and in a more comprehensive way. It's not like, you're doing shortcutting in any way. They are like comprehensive, and yet you're saving. You're doing it at a great speed. That's
Mhm.
amazing. Now, you now are doing something similar for your Scepter marketing clients, right? You're
Mhm.
installing AI-driven workflows for lead handling, onboarding, internal operations. So what's the thing, if I ask, like, clients are most surprised to see a system handle? It's not just an automation, but it is actually intelligence here working in the play.
Yeah, I think the clients are at varying levels, right? 'Cause some of them know about AI, some of them really know about AI, some have experimented with it, some of them use ChatGPT or something on a day-to-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
So they're starting to be more aware of what's possible. But the idea that we can come in and we can automate vast amounts of what they do and ingest all the data and everything. To give you an example, one of our recent clients, he had never done any systems at all in a decade, right, of being in business. He sells stuff online, he sells stuff, he buys a lot of stuff, he sells a lot of stuff, but he never had any kind of systems or anything other than spreadsheets. And then every time you got a new team member, they'd set up their own system, and then they'd leave or whatever, and then somebody else would come in and they'd have their own new system. So like nothing, no congruency, nothing for a decade. Right, so within a couple of months, we had everything, all of his contacts from his entire business, all organized into a system, right, where he can now see everything from all of his salespeople, all of the stuff. We were able to import all of that, and now we have set it up on a scoring system so that as people open emails, as we send out cold emails, as we send out LinkedIn messages for him, as he gets sales or whatever, it all goes into this scoring pool, and it surfaces the top people for his calling team to be able to call every day, right? Which is something, and to be able to do that in the speed at which we did it in just a few months, that kind of thing, trying to do it, I mean, even a year and a half ago with spreadsheets and even with some AI or like some Zapier duct tape or whatever, would cost astronomical amounts of money in tokens and whatever, as well as lots of time, because there's just so much to do, right? And with nothing built, basically, we're starting from scratch. He has no CRM. He's never even had a CRM, right? So his mind, I think, was kind of, when we first started talking, was like, well, you can do this, like you can do that. Like he just hadn't really thought about like that. He hadn't connected his experience with AI with the power of what it could actually do for his business. And so now that that's working, he's super excited that he was able to go from idea to implementation, powered by AI.
Yeah. I mean, pretty much it's like an AI SDR, right? What you're talking about right now here. So
Yep.
it's amazing what it can do. It can reduce so much of manual work and, make you more focused and actually get you into results much faster. And again,
100%.
maintaining the quality and everything. So now I'm going to come to my another segment where you have talked about this, like speed is your competitive moat here. Now let's talk about that question now, because I think this is where you had the most interesting thing to say. Speed is in the moat itself. Now walk me through what you actually mean by that.
Sure. So speed is there's a the way that I look at it is AI is like every other technology, right? There's early adopters, and then it eventually kind of gets to the masses, and then you have some stragglers, right? It's kind of this bell curve, and we're still not where everybody's using AI, at least not in terms of like actually automating their tasks, their lives, their businesses. There are more people doing that, but it's still kind of early adopter. We're moving towards mass adoption. So what we have at our hands, or what we have at our disposal now, what we have our hands on is the ability to go wicked fast, faster than we've been able to ever go for us that are in the digital marketing space or anything that's related to data. You can build apps in 10 days. You could build simpler apps in a weekend, or if you're smarter than me, you could probably build a complicated app in a weekend, right? So you can go really, really fast. And so I say that that's not necessarily the moat. It might get you out in front of everybody because you're going to be faster, but the moat is actually the customers and the sales and actually having a business, right? Because an idea that you built in 3 days versus 3 years is still just an idea until you actually sell it. You get people to pull out their wallets and charge their card. And that's what is really going to separate people that are just using AI or tinkering with AI or even building really, really cool stuff from businesses that actually win and make money. Is not only do you have to be fast, it's the Ricky Bobby quote, right? If you're not first, you're last. And so you got to be first, or you got to at least be in the top tier. But that's not enough. You actually have to have the marketing around it as well.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right, because it's the tools are existing and most agencies are figuring out how to use them. It's like who is going to get ahead of most, not all, but once that window closes, speed stops becoming a differentiator here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you gave a very specific example of, in a pre-call, that delivering 1 month's work of SEO work in a single day. Not theoretically, but actually doing it. Now, how does that change the economics of, say, running an agency here?
Yeah, I think it goes back to the hustle versus systems, right? Somebody that's hustling could do that themselves, right, for one client.
Mm-hmm.
We want to be able to do it for hundreds of clients eventually, right? And so you can't hustle your way to hundreds and hundreds of clients without having any systems, right? You can just sit down at your terminal or your whatever AI chatbot you use, and you can just go at it and you can get a bunch of stuff done quickly. But to be able to do that for lots of customers requires systems. And so we are in the process of just building those systems, right? You have to be thoughtful. You still have to go through a process. Otherwise, you can go really, really fast. You can end up nowhere really, really fast. And so we want to try to avoid that and just make sure that we're always building the systems that are kind of the harness to make sure that we can do the work repeatedly and with quality.
Okay. Yeah. Now, how do you think about like Ecom Circles? Does it have like a deeper structural advantage, like, data, network effects, switching costs, something like that, which you would say is a bigger moat here? What, according to you, is the biggest moat for you at this stage?
Yeah. So for Ecom Circles in particular, the data is part of it, and also our history, I guess you could say. So because we've been in business for 5 years, and because I had a couple of other softwares that were similar prior to this one, as soon as we got turned on to AI and how powerful it really was, and we started to be able to use it well, we were able to, because we already had something, we were able to go even faster. So I would say that actually, in some sense, speed is one of our moats, more so with Ecom Circles than some of starting over from scratch. Because we had something that was already built, we didn't have to go through the structure of how to build everything or build one thing and then kind of double back and build it again or like rearrange. We had something to start with. And so that helped us a little bit. So that's part of our moat. But at this point, yeah, I think it's our unique selling proposition, which is everything under one roof, right? All of these tools, hopefully for an Amazon or Walmart seller, you just need to use us. You don't have to use a bunch of other tools. So similar to like a Go High Level or even a ClickUp or a Monday, right? It's like this, like the one tool to rule them all, kind of an idea, right? We're trying to build that kind of thing for Amazon and Walmart sellers, and that value proposition is more our moat. So sure, somebody else could spin up a repricer in a weekend or an inventory piece of software in a weekend or whatever. But can you do all of the 7 different things that ours can do, and can you do them at least as well as us? Because I forget the percentage, but the idea that you have to be like 20 or 30% better than your competitors, whatever, somebody to make a change, right? Not just a little bit better. You have to be significantly better once people are already in the habit of using something. So the more that we're able to solve real problems for our sellers, and to do that, to solve multiple problems, then we kind of start to isolate ourselves, because we're not just a one-hit wonder. It's not just, hey, where there's this one Chrome extension here that you could use, or this new thing that popped up over here. We have all of it in one. And so it's just going to take somebody, even with speed, it's going to take them a long time to catch up to where we're at with both the sheer amount of stuff that we built, as well as the data component becomes helpful too, because as we grow, we get more insights from Amazon stores, from Walmart stores, and whatever. That helps us to keep our sellers safe. It helps us to be able to kind of catch early indicators about things that may be happening in the marketplace, and all of that network effect kind of starts to play in as well.
So in that case, like an experience for seller number 1 as opposed to seller number 3000 could be very different, because now your platform is like constantly learning. Now it has real transaction data, it has integrations. AI gives everyone execution, it doesn't give everyone direction. The people who know what to build and what problem to solve next, that knowledge is the actual scarce resource, right? So do you think that's the thing that actually separates the builders who will compound advantage from the ones who just move fast for a while?
Yeah, and I don't even know that I think the other people that are moving fast for a while are mostly in the group that are going to move fast to nowhere, right? Not all of them, but when you know what you want, then AI is the accelerator. And so if you don't know what you want or where you're going, you're just going to accelerate to nowhere and probably burn out. So if you have an idea and you can articulate it well, that itself has to be a skill that somebody has. And if they don't have that, they're going to have to acquire that skill before they can make the best use of AI. Not that they couldn't make any use of it, but the more somebody is clear-headed about what it is that they want and that they're able to articulate that, because you find that out real quick just talking to any AI bot, right? If you don't explain what you want, it's going to start giving you back stuff that doesn't make sense or whatever, and then you have to kind of go back and forth. So the more in the habit you are of that, the better. Which is one of the things that I'm most excited about, just kind of where we're positioned with my different companies, is because we already had some momentum, and so it feels like AI is just this rocket booster on the back of all of our companies to push us ahead super quick. And at the same time, we can kind of pull in this idea and pull in this idea, and we can actually make use of our ideas versus, okay, well, that's got to go in the backlog. We'll get to that in a year and a half. Right now, it's like, well, let's try that maybe next month.
Yeah. So basically here you would say that, knowledge is providing the direction and AI is just executing it. And I think that combination, what you have, incorporated in your agencies is the actual moat here. I strongly feel that. Now, you run 3 businesses, Scepter, Ecom, Alfred. These were all bootstrapped since 2009 with no venture capitalist money. So when you look at your team today versus where you need to be in 2 years, what's the operating model? Are you still hiring humans, or is most of that growth coming from AI agents now?
Yeah, almost all AI agents or spending on more tokens. I had a call with one of my top team members today, and he was suggesting maybe we hire a couple of extra people and put them under these 2 guys. They're doing really well. We could probably grow this department. And I said, I think actually what you meant to say was that you're going to spend the next 3 months figuring out how to automate as much of their jobs as possible with AI so that we don't have to hire anybody. He was like, okay, yeah, I guess. But that's, I think that we will still need to hire people, and I think the hiring of humans is going to be mostly at the human touch level, right? So account managers to, when there's something that actually goes wrong and there's a problem and somebody wants to talk to somebody's got to be there to field that. Or in the sales process, oftentimes, especially with higher ticket stuff, people want to talk to a person, they want that reassurance, they want to know that there's a face behind the company or the brand. And so I do anticipate that we will hire more of those kinds of people, account managers, people to do demo calls, these kinds of things, but not so much the developers or the SEO people or content writers or anything like that. AI as much as we possibly can.
Yeah, no, because for a founder like you, when you started early on, you said if I want to do more, I need more people. right? That's what you started hiring. So that's now you have a mental shift, that what is actually required. What I have observed is like, that a lot of operators who they get the concept, but they can't make that switch in practice. Do you have any insights on why is it? Is it all trust issues, or people have to gain enough knowledge again to make that mental shift for their business to start scaling without actually increasing the headcounts?
You mean the transition? Talking about the shift from people to AI?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, I think what happens, because this happened to me, right? My first time I used ChatGPT, was like, I guess this is kind of cool. It gives me answers fast,
Mhm.
I guess. This is like ChatGPT 3 point something, right? It wasn't really that great. Like, I still Googled stuff at that point all the time, right? Wouldn't ask ChatGPT. And what happens is like it kind of calibrates your mind that okay, well, this is where AI is at because this is my experience with it. And AI moves so fast that literally the next week when you went to use that same tool, it could be different. But I wasn't used to things moving that fast, right? Like there's if you take something like WordPress, right? They release new versions, like one major version every year or something, right?
Mhm.
Just things would go at like cadences that were just generally slower than AI. And AI moves so fast that if something doesn't work today, like give it a month and then try it again and it'll probably work. Right? I remember the first time I gave ChatGPT a screenshot and it read the screenshot. I wasn't sure it would work. Pretty sure it didn't work the first time I tried it, and then it could read the screenshot all of a sudden. And then I tried giving it spreadsheets and it choked on the spreadsheets, and a couple months later it could process all the spreadsheets without any problems. And so, because it continues to learn and grow, I think one of the dangers is for founders or for people in our space is they kind of get calibrated to what it is last time they used it. And so then they're like, well, this doesn't seem like it works as well as other people say. And then on the other hand, you have these people that are, everything AI is amazing. I'm automating everything. I automated my whole life. I automated my going to the bathroom. And they're like, oh, like, wait, I guess I'm missing something. What am I? And so it's kind of like this FOMO, like I'm missing out and I've tried it, but it wasn't working for me. And so I just don't know how to really get it to work. Or they'll do what I did and you just go at it and you're doing the hustle thing and you're trying to hustle your way through it and it doesn't work like that. You'll get, if you just have a couple clients or something, like you'll get there and you'll probably do great. But as you grow, you have to have some kind of systems, and you have to have more than systems, you have to have systems thinking in order to be able to produce the systems. And that's something that just takes a certain kind of mindset, I think.
But where do you think the limits are? Because I know you have talked about the fact that, speed is a temporary window here.
Yeah.
Now, what are the things you feel AI agents genuinely cannot take off your plate today? The places where you still need a person in the room.
I think about the only place that we still need people are, like I said, at that human level, especially when there's we had a customer recently who, you probably had this in your agency, right? They sign up, they're excited, and then they ghost you for a month or two or whatever. And so that's the kind of thing that we could have had AI continue to reach out, with emails or text messages or whatever. But it, like, when one of our account managers actually got him on the phone and was able to talk to him, like, it just makes the whole thing better, right? And was able to save the project and move it forward and so on. And so I think that having that, maybe at some point AI will be able to have those kind of more delicate conversations, but I think that's still somewhere right now where humans are needed. I think the creative element at this point is still better from humans, especially with humans that are experienced at doing, say, like web design or graphic design or whatever. The AI tools are getting better and you can do a lot with them, but the people that are doing stuff with them already know what they're doing in the first place. So again, it's an accelerator more than it's just creating something from nothing without any experience, right? And so you still need to have, at this point, the human skill, or at least the understanding of what is supposed to happen before you can get the AI to do what you want it to do. And if not, you can always learn, but it's a longer road. So I see us still needing humans for the relationships, right? Because ultimately people are going to want to, and especially if you can, I try to play this out, right? You fast forward in your brain 3 years, 5 years, whatever, and the world is all AI, robots, everything, right? People are still going to want to have some kind of a personal connection, I imagine, right? Like even if you could go to a restaurant and it was all robots, people would probably still go to a restaurant where there are servers because they want to see another actual person. Because at some point your brain goes, I know that this person looks like they're real, but they're not, and that's just weird. And so genuine human personal connection, and that's something that we can give during the sales process, during the relationship with one of our customers, right? And I think that that's the most difficult part to replace with AI right now.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. Client relationships, I mean, yeah, the AI cannot replace that kind of, human touch, what you were talking about. Even like it still needs a creative direction, right? For your business development, you still have to put in some of your thoughts for your AI to execute it. a human touch would be needed eventually. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah. So now you work with hundreds of agencies on a white label business. They own the client relationship, you execute behind the scenes. That model requires very tight operational discipline at a remove. So how has AI changed how you deliver quality when you are not visible to the end client?
So because everything works at the API level, right? Like you just essentially need access, and it actually has made life a lot easier
Hmm.
because we can get our clients to give us authorization, and once we get authorization, we can programmatically touch pretty much everything we need to touch. And then when there's something we can't do, it has to go back through that agency back to their client, and we have to still kind of go back and forth. And so there's always some of that because they're the ones that are managing the relationships. But it's made the ability to execute just night and day difference from what it has been.
And I mean, execution and then, quality assessments, you would say, like, I'm sure they have like comprehensive QA checks happening, that in the label model, which is like very, very important, right? I mean, you want to give improved quality services. Now, I want to step back from the AI conversation for a second and just ask that when you look at the actual, business of running three businesses at this scale, bootstrapped, without taking outside money, now what's the thing that takes more time than it should?
That's a good question. It takes more time than it should. The team meetings, I think that's still the answer. Still having meetings with human team members. And it's something that I kind of struggle with, right? Because again, the human element needs to be there. That's kind of the glue that keeps people together. I mean, there's obviously monetary compensation, but people work with people that they know, like, and trust, right? And that goes for my team members as well. They work with me because they know me, they like me, they trust me. If I don't talk to them anymore, some of that would be lost, right? Even if they were happy with their compensation. So the meetings sometimes are still way longer than I would like. So I try to just go for a walk while I'm on the phone or something, so that I'm kind of multitasking, so that we can kind of do two things at once. But yeah, I'd say that the meetings are still too long.
Okay. And what do you think about, like, client acquisition and all? Because you are at the end, like, AI can automate a lot of things, but you would still need a human to, at least acquire a client. Is it something you think it's pretty much automated at your end, or that
It's
takes time?
Yeah, it's one of the things that we're working on, trying to again automate as much as possible. We're experimenting right now with, hopefully it'll be live next week, some new offers that are lower ticket, to see if we can get an offer to market that the market will accept without talking to a person. And so we're trying to kind of bake that into our business model in a sense, right? Because otherwise we're going to have the exact same thing that you're talking about, right? Like, well, one of the things that would be slow is it is slow to have conversations and go back and forth, and people have to go get sign-offs and approvals, or they have to just think about it and talk to their spouse or whatever, right? And you go back and forth. I mean, you wait on contracts for days, or you have to go back and forth and get your legal whatever changed because they didn't like this clause. All that takes time. So what would not take time is something that I try to think about along with what we're doing. Okay, well, this is taking time. What would make it not take time? Well, if we just sold something that they just bought, well, probably nobody's going to buy something you know as expensive as some of the stuff that we sell without a conversation with somebody. So what if we just had a different offer that was lower ticket that they could say yes to easily? There's a pretty phenomenal talk that I heard from a guy a couple years ago at a mastermind, where he was talking about kind of his way that he went through that. He was an agency owner. I think he worked with dentists, orthodontists, or something, and he was always selling them this, the agency retainer, and he ended up getting his price to a point where 15 minutes on a call they would say yes, because the price was good, the message was clear, the offer made sense, and so it drastically reduced the amount of time that he had to spend convincing people, going back and forth with legal and whatever. And so that always kind of stuck with me, and that's something that now that I'm AI empowered, we're trying to figure out, how do we do that in our agency? How do we put out an offer that is actually a no-brainer offer that people would say yes to, without having to go through a conversation flow, without having to go through, where the contract that they sign isn't complicated. They don't have to go get a lawyer to read it, all this kind of stuff. How do we just make it simple? And that's kind of back to the same idea that we talked about with Alfred, of just reducing the friction. How do we reduce the friction in the sales process? Even if that means that what we're offering is slightly different than what we've been offering, that might be fine, right? Because if we don't have to have people on the phone, then it becomes more scalable, and that's worth something.
Wow, that's amazing. But I think the question would come up to be like, how will you maintain that kind of quality? People will, do you think people will easily trust that kind of a pipeline and offer? I still need to, validate from a human if this offer is actually so valid? Or I
Yeah,
don't know.
I think there are ways of helping to build the trust without having the conversations person to person, right? The conversation ends up happening kind of in the background. It's similar to why people like celebrities, right? They've never met that person. They've never really spending time with this person, but they are whatever. They're like huge Swiftie fans or whatever, right? It's like, well, why is that? Like, you don't actually know this person, you never talked to this person, but you've seen them. And there's something about them that's attractive to you, and so you're drawn to the value that they're putting out. And so I think that same kind of model, something that we are trying to emulate too. How do we position ourselves so that people are attracted to us rather than us having to chase them? And so that way, when we do have a conversation, even if it's not with a person, but it's just through email or AI or whatever, they're going to be more likely to say, yeah, that's what I want, because they already know us, like us, and trust us because of what we've been putting out.
Right. I mean, that's talking about, how you can put up, that's like putting up your brand value to test as well, because you've already established customers, users, so they already have a trust in your brand. So this is like taking a step further where you are saying that, okay, do you trust us enough to actually not have a negotiation with a human, but actually the AI doing the work for you? Okay, that's amazing. Now, the ecom circles community, that's like 3,000 plus again, Amazon, Walmart sellers. That's a community with real gravity, need that doesn't exist yet.
So in terms of software, that's exactly what we're trying to build. Is our understanding of the needs of the market is for an all-in-one system, so that people don't have to string together all these tools and duct tape them together and use all these spreadsheets. So that's the first thing. The second thing, and kind of where we're moving, is also the connectivity to AI, right? So can I get my data in and out of platforms? Can I get access to my data? So that's kind of the next thing that we're working on. But I think that solves the biggest problems that we're aware of, and also kind of anticipates the next moves. Beyond that, the problems in our industry are probably a little bit more like people problems, and so we're still kind of trying to think through how to solve those. So, you mentioned, Amazon changes its policies, Walmart does the same, and unfortunately, sellers are just kind of at the mercy of those platforms when they're selling. And there's plenty of Reddit threads or Facebook group posts or whatever where you can see that maybe there are even some false positives. People got flagged that weren't actually doing something incorrect or violating terms. And there's not really a lot of recourse, right? So I think at some point, one thing that we'd like to solve is figuring out how we can have an open line of communication with major marketplaces like Amazon and Walmart, so that we could help to surface the needs of customers and have a more open conversation to helping some of them and kind of finding more middle ground.
Okay, what exactly are you thinking here?
Yeah, kind of like taking the seller feedback, getting it back to the marketplace, and saying, "Hey, this is what the sellers are saying." And it's not like they don't do that at all, but there seems like there's enough of a miss between what sellers are experiencing and what the marketplaces seem to just not be aware that the sellers are experiencing. That it seems like a problem that would be worth solving, and if we could solve it, would probably help our brand significantly, because we would be one of the only places people could get answers. Like sometimes stuff happens and you just get no answers from these places. You go through their AI bots or whatever, right? And their AI bots are not always so good. And so, or their first level, second level, third level of support, and they're just not really able to help you or give you good answers about what's actually going on or why something happened. So it can be really difficult and really frustrating. And so I think that's it's kind of it's a different kind of problem for us, because it's not one that we're used to solve. Like, we solve technical problems. I like solving technical data problems. This is a little bit of more of like a relational problem than it is a data problem. So we'll see how we do.
Okay. The last question on the hard parts. Now, you're deploying AI agents, as fast as you can across all the three businesses. Where is the deployment slower than you want? Where do you think that AI has not been able to take off your plate yet?
It's kind of everywhere, because I love speed, right? So it feels like it always is going slower than I want, even when it's going fast. I think one of the struggles is getting all of the team members, not necessarily just to buy in, because I think most of our team has bought in, but to realize their own kind of limited thinking around AI, because they have their experiences with AI, and some of those are good, some of those are not so good, and whatever it is, it's calibrated probably at something that has changed since they last experienced it, right? So getting them to not just say, "Oh yeah, I think AI is a good idea, we should probably do that," to being as hands-on as I am, or at least towards that direction, so that they become 10 times as powerful themselves in their roles, right? Because then we have, the more that happens, the more that we're able to grow exponentially. It's one thing to have a founder that's embracing AI and building AI agents, but I'm limited by what I can do, right? And then as we have another person that does that, okay, so now we have two of us that are implementing these AI bots and whatever. Okay, now we have a third person. Okay, now we have a fourth person. Now we have developers that are doing it. But if we had hypothetically 50 people that were all doing the same thing, right, we would have not just me times 10 or whatever, we'd have our whole team times 10. And that's even more mind-blowing, because that's a whole nother level of coordination that we haven't even gotten close to figuring out yet, right? And I'm sure the AI bots can help us with the coordination. But yeah, that's a whole nother level of going at breakneck speed with a team, right? They usually say they go, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And I'm like, why not do both? And so how do I go fast together? And that's, if we can solve that problem, then the goal is to get there with the speed, and then use your advantage of the speed to build as big a moat as you can before everybody else shows up.
Perfect. And that's a great point, to still have speed as your biggest moat at this stage. Now, my last questions. You have been automating since before AI was a mainstream concept. Now, you have watched a lot of other founders try to get into AI. Some figure it out, some don't. Now, what's the most common mistake you see? The thing that holds people back from actually doing what you have done.
I think lack of a vision of what they're trying to accomplish. I think that's helped me in my different businesses. Is like I had a problem to solve, and it was my own problem usually, right? And I think that especially for founders that are trying to build a thing absent of actually doing the thing themselves, it's way easier to go in a bunch of different directions that may not actually get you to your end goal. I get to bypass the whole entire feedback loop of trying to figure out what the problems our customers already have, because I am the customer, right? And I build my businesses generally around that kind of a thing. So being hyper problem aware, right? Also, I think that's one of the superpowers, right? So I think if I was going to encourage a new founder that wanted to just start something, probably it's going to be easier for you to just start with something that you already know, because again, AI is an accelerator. So if you have to go start over, you can still get there and you can still learn something new and then power yourself with AI. But if you already know something, if your goal is to build a company, probably do it with something that you already know, because it's going to be way easier and faster. And so that's what we do. And then in the process of doing that, you learn new things, and then you can build off those things, and so on, and kind of spiders. But just going at, hey, I'm going to start an AI business, and I'm going to sell AI to small businesses. What are you going to sell? What's the problem? You've never done it before, so you don't even know what the problem is that you're trying to help them solve. You've not had any conversations. You've not tried to implement, whatever. And so I think that's an easy place for especially new founders to get stuck, is not really being hyper problem aware and just thinking that AI is kind of a magic bullet.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Understanding the pain points of every business, and every business has a pain, not one, but multiple pain points. Understanding what the need of the hour is, what's going to help you directionalize your business in a more significant way. Now, that's amazing. Where is this going for you? You're definitely so ambitious. So what does Matt Hall's portfolio of businesses look like in 5 years if everything goes the way you hope?
Be a lot going on, because it's like kind of everything all at once. One of the questions that I constantly have in my head is, where am I limited in my thinking, right? Because AI allows me to go faster, and so I'm solving the problems that I'm aware of. But what problems am I not aware of, or maybe I'm aware of, but I'm not conscious that I'm aware of, that I could solve, that might be 10 times more valuable to solve for people, right? So we have an SEO company, and that's great. We can solve that problem for businesses, but is there something else that we could solve for businesses, or something else that we could do with our SEO skills and use those SEO skills to solve, to get, to do marketing, to solve some other kind of problem? What are the problems that we could solve that we're really actually equipped to solve, or we're very close to being equipped to solve, that would actually be 10 times more valuable than what it is we're offering right now? Because I think that, we talked about in the pre-call, I think there's a window between everybody where we're at now and kind of the mass adoption of AI. We're still kind of in that. We have a bit of a grace period for us who are really trying as much as we can to implement AI as quickly as possible now. There's definitely an advantage. And so I guess another way to ask the question is, how can I make the most use of the advantage, right? I have been doing these things, these are my 3 businesses. Is there something else entirely different or adjacent to what I'm doing that actually is a massive opportunity that I'm not seeing because I've been looking at these things that I am doing? Because that's easiest, just to solve the problems that you're already in front of, and you can make a lot of money doing that. You can grow great businesses doing that, and that's what we're trying to do. But the question in the back of my head is, where am I missing a massive opportunity that there's a window that I could take advantage of it if we're able to execute, because now we can execute. And so I'm kind of have my hands here and I have my focus here, and then when I get time to kind of think, it's like, well, what else is there that maybe, and it could be the same things that we're doing in just some way of 10xing or 100xing what we're doing. Maybe there's a different angle that I'm not seeing or whatever, but I'm sure that there's something that I'm missing. And so just trying to be humble about, like, I don't know everything. What am I missing? How can I learn from somebody that's doing something else? How can I borrow ideas? How can I get my robots to borrow ideas and just implement the ideas for me? All of that. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think, Matt, this has been exactly what I wanted to bring in this show, by having you here. I would say foresightedness and thinking ahead of the curve is what exactly you've been doing. Like since 2009, since the time you have been building, you had forecasted these kind of like pain points, what businesses would have been facing. You're working on that, and now you want to think ahead of the curve and actually start thinking about it now itself so that you can solve the problems later on. So that's amazing. It's exactly the story of someone who didn't wait for AI to be mainstream, who figured out the systems before the systems were cool. Thank you for being so, so specific, being honest, and being real about, both about what works and what doesn't. Understanding both the sides of the coin is equally important. It's been a great conversation. Now, before I leave you, where can people find you and follow along with what you're building?
Sure. So, marketermatt.com is my personal website, under construction, mostly by the robots, but that's where I talk about kind of all the projects that I'm doing, the different companies. So that's kind of the best place for cross companies. You can follow me on X at marketermatt as well. And then, of course, my company is ecomcircles.com, sceptermarketing.com for more information about those specific companies.
Awesome. So links will be provided for this episode. And if you're a founder who's been watching the AI wave and wondering when the right time to actually start is, this was the episode for you. Thank you so much for your time. See you in the next one. Thank you.